Ogun State records 108 new COVID-19 cases in 24 hours as Nigeria confirms 663 infections. Nigeria's domestic airlines to resume operations June the 21st. In international news, slain American black man George Floyd laid to rest in Houston, Texas. And in sport, Roger Federer out of tennis until 2021.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Just 4 days ago, on Saturday, Nigeria's COVID-19 tally was 11,844. The count is rising so rapidly in the country. The number of cases has now jumped to 13,464, more than 1,500 cases in 4 days. Nigeria's Center for Disease Control confirmed 663 new cases on Tuesday. Lagos has not yielded its unenviable epicenter status as a record 170 new cases. Its Ogun State recorded 108 cases. 24 other states also recorded new infections. Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, says President Muhammadu Buhari's recent executive order on financial autonomy for the 2 tiers of state institutions remains sacrosanct and will be strictly implemented. Malami says any rumor claiming the president had backtracked on the implementation of the executive order is false and mischievous. The Attorney General says the executive order is aimed at deepening democracy from the grassroots and to ensure effective observance of the doctrine of separation of powers in Nigeria. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has approved direct primary for the All Progressives Congress, APC, in selecting its candidate for the upcoming Edo State governorship election in September. The People's Democratic Party and 13 others have opted for indirect primaries. Direct primary involves voting by all members of the party, while only delegates vote in indirect primary. APC has fixed June the 22nd for its own primary. INEC spokesperson Festus Okoye has urged all parties to conduct their primaries in full compliance with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution and the 2010 Electoral Act. In just a week and a half, the country's domestic airlines will resume operations. Domestic flights were suspended in March as part of measures aimed at curbing the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Correspondent Deji Badmos tells us how this industry is preparing for a comeback.
Over 120 aircraft have been grounded at airports across Nigeria for months now as a result of the country's COVID-19 lockdown. For an aviation industry player like Gabriel Olowo, who heads a body of aviation experts in Nigeria, the announcement of the resumption of operations is a very cheering news.
We've been strategizing, especially on how not to spread the virus. From all stakeholders, the airport, the ticketing office, the customs, immigration, and all that are involved, in the value chain. We've been talking. And I think we have templates on ground. What we need to do now is to walk the talk. Let's now see how ready we are to experiment the challenges of COVID.
Part of Nigeria's coronavirus mitigation strategy is a directive by the government that every flight must not exceed between 50 to 70% passenger capacity to allow for social distancing.
The demand of social distancing on board, where today's passenger is asking for the cheapest fare, you might need 70, 80, 90% load factor to break even. If you're going to need 80% load factor to break even, and social distancing demands that the aeroplane will be 50%, at the same cost of doing business and at the same tariff that you are used to, it's not going to be possible.
There's every likelihood that fares may go up when flight operations eventually resume. But for a frequent flyer like Tony, fares are the least of his problems.
Yes, I'm more bothered about safety because I'm one of the frequent flyers, and I'd rather my safety comes first before the cost. That's the biggest issue we have. But I feel government should not leave it to the airlines alone. I feel government should come to their aid. That's the only way you can make the airlines be able to survive this time we're in.
Aviation has been one of the sectors most impacted by Nigeria's coronavirus restrictions. Virtually all airlines have placed their employees on indefinite leave without pay. And even when flight operations begin later this month, it is certain that not all the employees will be recalled to work.
Because of what has happened and because of the fear that people have been developed in people, it is going to take them time before they begin to think of even traveling. And even if you are going to travel again, it is going to require some procedures. They might start asking you to bring certificate. They might ask you to, do social distances. And because of all those, protocols, some people might decide to say, I'm not even going to travel now.
The Nigerian Aviation Ministry estimates that for every day this lockdown has lasted, the cost on the country's aviation industry runs into almost $2 million daily. And even if airlines receive government support, it's still uncertain if they will find a viable financial path forward.
Consequence, they say, is the strongest modifier of behavior, and so it is in the Nigerian marketplace, where consumers now find that some stores and companies are inflating prices because of the prevailing coronavirus pandemic that has changed the trading landscape in the last few months. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has now charged 4 popular outlets in Abuja for price gouging. The Commission filed a 6-count charge against the outlets. These charges include engaging in false, misleading, deceptive representation of prices of sanitizers, hand washing liquids, and various brands of disinfectants in the face of a pandemic. The Commission says these acts are in breach of a myriad of laws. Coming up, African stories. Tunisia secures 180 million euros loan from Africa Development Bank to fight COVID-19. And later, international news. Slain American black man George Floyd laid to rest in Houston, Texas.
You are watching ANN.
Hey, tell them. They told me you are the best around here.
What can I do for you, sir?
I want my own very, very simple. I don't want any shine. If I see any shine.
Actually, I'd love some sequins on my skirt. And I don't like any frills. I beg, I want frills on mine. But it must not be too tight.
Tight! That tight now, that is what I want. And the transition.
Oh, you know what? I want a gown. Me too. I want to come to one.
You know what GMS are doing? Hey, did you capture all the information?
Of course not.
Actually.
Fantastic.
I give my customers what they love because everyone has their unique style. So why should they wear the same thing? Just like MTN for me, which gives unique data and recharge offers just the way you like it. Just dial *121# and turn up great offers every day.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Many African countries are struggling economically as a result of the novel coronavirus pandemic that has ballooned their budgets in efforts to fight the disease. Tunisia has obtained a 180 million euros loan from the African Development Bank to help in its struggle against the disease. Adney Chawoji has the details.
The funds, approved by the Board of Directors of the African Development Bank, will support the North African state's effort against COVID-19. In addition, it will help Tunisian authorities to cope with the economic and social consequences of this unprecedented sanitary crisis.
The African Development Bank is helping Tunisia at a critical stage. The country has many economic and social problems. The African dimension of this loan is important. It shows the solidarity of African lenders with the countries facing the negative repercussions of the crisis.
Moreover, a considerable sum will be transferred to the Ministry of Social Affairs. It will provide social coverage and immediate assistance for more than 2 million vulnerable individuals, including 140,000 low-income pensioners.
Women and children, as well as low-income pensioners and vulnerable families and businesses, need this direct financial assistance because they have been suffering for 3 months. However, the state needs to mobilize more resources because the extent of the economic and social damage is catastrophic.
The Tunisian parliament has approved the 180 million euro fund, as well as the government support to the vulnerable population. The cabinet of Elias El-Farfar has granted an exceptional allowance to 623,000 families with limited income, 350,000 private sector employees affected by the crisis, and 10,000 workers who lost their jobs.
The partnership between Tunisia and the African Development Bank has been going on for almost 50 years, covering different sectors, including health, human development, energy, water, transport, agriculture, and the financial sector. The new loan strengthens this partnership.
The African Development Bank program will also enable 230,000 small farmers, more than 320,000 employees, and around 50,000 self-employed workers and artisans to keep their jobs. The mobilized funds will help save 400 Tunisian exporting enterprises and 250,000 private businesses from bankruptcy. It will also enhance early detection through the use of rapid screening tests for more than 450,000 people.
Ghana's schools are preparing to partly resume as the country gradually begins to reopen following a nationwide shutdown that was aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. Various measures aimed at easing the restrictions have been announced. Correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rafai has the details.
Letitia Tano has been taking lessons from home since schools were closed in March due to the coronavirus outbreak. She's watching an education channel created by the state broadcaster to teach students. She says it's been difficult adjusting to this style of learning out of the classroom.
When I was in school like this, if I didn't understand something, I had to consult my teacher so that he would explain it to me. But here, since I can't meet the teacher, I find it very difficult understanding some questions and things they'll be teaching on the television.
The government has further eased lockdown restrictions, which will allow schools to reopen later this month. Only final year high school students like Letitia and those at university will return to classes. But some parents are worried about the further spread of the coronavirus when schools reopen.
The COVID-19 has not left, it's still with us. So as a parent, my concern is how safe my child is. Even though we are going to put the necessary measures in place for the child to go back to school, how safe are they over there?
Since Ghana first eased lockdown in April, the country's infections of the coronavirus have kept increasing. The government says the country has to learn to live with the virus. All schools are to be disinfected before they are reopened. A classroom like this, which usually holds 50 students, will now be limited to 30. This is to allow some level of physical distancing among the students. The government has also tasked head teachers with enforcing the strict wearing of face masks and hand hygiene. Some are calling for all teachers and students to be tested for COVID-19 before they are allowed back in schools.
We need to draw up some criteria, and after that, whoever meets that criteria should be allowed to undergo testing, because we may not be able to handle all of them undergoing the tests. But if the government or somebody suggests that they should be tested, I think it's a good idea. It would have been much better.
Letitia Tano says she's happy to be going back to school, but she may find it difficult complying with physical distancing when she meets her friends.
Uganda has begun distribution of free government masks today. President Yoweri Museveni announced that 10 factories were selected to manufacture face masks and to be distributed by government as it moves to ease the coronavirus restrictions. Museveni made the announcement during the celebration of the Scientific Heroes Day at State House in Entebbe. The government says the exercise will kick off at border districts before the rest of the country is covered. When we return, international news. Slain American black man George Floyd laid to rest in Houston, Texas. And later, sport. Roger Federer out of tennis until 2021.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. George Floyd, the black American that was killed by a white police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota 2 weeks ago, has been laid to rest in Houston, Texas on Tuesday. Dignitaries joined Floyd's friends and family at the funeral as anti-racist protests continue to rock many parts of the world. Inside the church in Houston was a private service for Floyd, while thousands gathered outside, including the county sheriff, to show their support. George Floyd was laid to rest as family and friends gathered to say their final goodbyes, and people nationwide continue to march in his memory. George Floyd was restored at his funeral by religious and political leaders, family and friends in his hometown of Houston, Texas. Co-pastor at the Fountain of Praise Church, Reverend Maya Wright, told mourners, quote, "This is a homegoing celebration," and in his sermon, Reverend Al Sharpston called Floyd's murder not just a tragedy, but a crime.
We know the price for black life is the same as the price for white life. We're going to keep coming back to these situations over and over again.
And former Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden sent a message.
For most people, the numbers you feel now will slowly turn day after day, season after season into purpose through the memory of the one they lost. But for you, that day has come before you can fully grieve.
The burial was held afterwards at the Houston Memorial Gardens, where Floyd was laid to rest next to his mother. Floyd's death has strengthened calls for social reform across the U.S. and the world, and Minneapolis, where Floyd was killed, has become the focal point for change. Correspondent Dan Williams reports.
The flowers and the messages here at the spot where George Floyd was killed just over 2 weeks ago continue to grow in size. This outpouring of emotion is a powerful reminder as to the horrific events that took place here. As Floyd is laid to rest, it's also another chance for the community here to reflect on recent events.
I mean, this has been happening for years, and everybody knows that. Now that it's being put to the forefront, I think everybody can see it, and it's been the same. I mean, there's multiple races out here, and everybody just wants to be treated equally. I don't think it's, too much to ask for us to just be treated, the same as everyone else. And as you can see, everyone out here is here for the same reason, and that's it.
Although the immediate focus for many here is on getting justice for George Floyd, broader goals include much more. Police reform proposals have moved toward defunding police and spending some of that money on other social organisations that, it's argued, can better help Minneapolis citizens, such as experts in mental health and domestic abuse. While moves to disband the Minneapolis Police Department altogether and bring a more community-focused police force are also gaining momentum among Minneapolis city councillors.
With the reform, what can be achieved is that we have officers who do want to protect and serve the community in which they are working in versus officers who are full of hatred for a person just based on the color of their skin.
This is a community still reeling in shock following a dramatic chain of events that began here. But many are hopeful that long-term positive change can now be achieved.
In the early days of COVID-19, Mexico extended needed support to China. Now that the tables have turned, China is returning the favor by helping Mexico in the fight against the novel coronavirus. Correspondent Alisdair Beverstock has the details.
At the start of 2020, as China was struggling to contain COVID-19, Mexico was there to help, offering political support during China's time of need.
Today, that support is being remembered as thousands of tons of PPE arrive now on a weekly basis in Mexico City, flown direct from Shanghai, arranged by China's embassy here in Mexico City. Mexico's alliance during China's time of crisis will, according to China's ambassador to Mexico, never be forgotten.
Enrique Dussel from Mexico City's Center for China-Mexico Studies says the global crisis has only strengthened the two countries' ties.
China is, like no other country, has been responding to the request of the Mexican president in terms of cooperation and support of the health pandemic.
According to Oscar Leon, an international trade analyst, the pandemic has helped the two countries see each other in another light.
In Mexico, we
have always seen bilateral relations with China almost exclusively as economic. But with China, it's also important to earn the trust of its public. So Mexico should be making the most of this situation to establish relations of friendship and bilateral cooperation.
As Mexico looks at the concrete actions of its global partners during its time of need, a stronger cross-Pacific relationship with China is almost certain to remain on the other side of the pandemic.
At least one person has died and 4 are missing after floods ravaged central and southern China on Monday. More than 800,000 persons have been affected by flooding in Hunan, Jiangsu and Guangdong. Floodings and landslides were also reported in Hong Kong, but several flood victims were rescued by emergency services.
Villages underwater, houses destroyed, children and the elderly trapped. The strongest downpour this year has hit most parts of southern China, affecting over 2.6 million people in 11 provinces. Starting last Tuesday, 110 rivers have seen water levels rising to dangerous levels, and more than 1,300 houses have been destroyed. In Shuangjai village in the Guangxi Autonomous Region, over 3,000 people were trapped when the flood hit, cutting off access to the outside world. Armed police had to go door to door to evacuate residents to safety.
It's the worst flood our county has experienced since 1994. Armed police dispatched a team and brought us relief supplies.
The floods destroyed roads and disrupted power supplies, affecting 80,000 households in the Guangxi city of Guilin. But local authorities were able to repair most of the facilities within a day.
We have resumed power supply to 14 main lines. We cannot start repair work for the other 2 branch lines due to interrupted transportation.
Authorities have allocated disaster relief supplies to the worst affected regions. They've also deployed crews to head off further flooding, activating early warning and emergency response mechanisms. All these measures will be put to the test as more heavy rain is expected for several days to come.
Up next, sports. Roger Federer out of tennis until 2021. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, 20-time Grand Slam singles champion Roger Federer will not appear on tennis courts until next year. The 38-year-old Swiss has needed follow-up arthroscopic surgery after undergoing a similar keyhole procedure in February. Federer holds the record for men's Grand Slam singles titles. He is also the world's highest paid athlete. His last appearance on the court was in front of 52,000 fans at a charity match against Rafael Nadal in Cape Town in early February. Rugby union in Australia will return next month. The Queensland Reds and New South Wales Mariners will open the schedule at the Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane on July the 3rd. Australia will become the second nation to resume professional rugby. New Zealand is set to open this weekend. South Africa's Super Rugby teams are expected to play in a home-based competition, but Argentina's Jaguares and the Tokyo-based Sunwolves face an uncertain future. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatoji. Have a pleasant evening.